Cool. All right, I'm down.
Yeah,
We can
no,
talk
let's
about
do
that
it.
stuff.
I'm cool with that. I think that'll be.
That's out of the way.
It only took that took half the show.
Yeah, look at the time, Dan. It only took us an hour to get to starting the show.
Of course. Boy, we are not organized today.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that. Sounds good. Releasing when it's ready. Okay, let's finally get the show on the road.
Woohoo!
Coming up in this episode, releasing when it's ready. Exploitation remotely, exploitation locally. Name changes and mergers and Kali as we see it today. Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 10. I barely have enough fingers for it, of Linux User Space. I'm Leo.
And I'm Dan. Leo, we midterms 10.
We hit midterm. This is it. This is the halfway point of the show before we go on break again to have a little breather from all the digging and
Yeah, exactly.
on the internet. Man, I sure am glad that the internet and archive.org and all that other kind of stuff exists.
I know. Yeah, it would make this show a lot harder.
Yeah, this show would be the show would be way shorter for sure. And speaking of releasing when it's ready, we had to postpone the recording for a day.
We did, yeah.
Because the script was not ready.
It was not ready.
So, but in the theme of releasing when it's ready, Dan, I know you've been keeping your eyeballs all over the Fedora thing because you mentioned the OpenSSL issue, and I had no idea that the Fedora 37 release date being put on hold was as a direct result of a bug in OpenSSL. I did not know this.
Yeah, so at least the last delay was put to that anyway. So this latest OpenSSL bug, nobody really had knowledge of how bad it was or what it was exactly. They were keeping that kind of close to the vest. So the bug didn't get released and exploited in the wild before they could patch it. Right.
Yeah, OpenSSL underpins everything.
Most of the internet, probably.
If you're on the internet, OpenSSL is, it's a big part of your life. You just don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything kind of makes that happen seamlessly in the background, which is why the internet works in the first place. But it's important. So it's very important.
Because of that, Fedora really wanted to get the fix in the release before they released, rather than to have to do an over-the-air patch in case it was super bad, so that it was just right in the ISO, ready to go. And so that's the latest delay anyway. So they decided that last target was November 1st, and then this next one is now going to be released on the 15th. So
right.
They say.
And so the timeline, because I've been very excited about Fedora 37, not super excited about the whole Mesa AMD Intel not getting codecs thing, but I was hoping the early target was going to get hit on October 18th. It's not normal that they hit the early target, so that was me just being wishful.
Right.
But I was very excited for October 25th, which was the original target.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, November 1st was the first extended target, and then now November 15th, as a result of the OpenSSL bug, is the new target.
Yep.
So you'll hear this episode before Fedora 37 gets its release. If you're keeping up with the show, you're probably listening to this on December 3rd,
maybe,
and you'd have to go back in time a little bit. Think about how this went.
So I've not witnessed. I've seen Fedora delay before. I don't know if I've seen them delay this many times.
Well,
or this far.
This thing was scary. This
It
is
scary.
a far-reaching, and it touches everything.
It does.
I mean, if you're dealing with encryption, there's a good chance that OpenSSL is somewhere in the mix and having something that could just. I think you mentioned denial of service is kind of the result.
Yeah, it's a buffer overrun, which results in a denial of service because your machine gets overwhelmed. But it wasn't even known that was what was going to happen. With the breakage, it just said it was critical, and then it turns out, well, it's not really critical, but it's very high. And they said, the release will be out on Tuesday. Everybody, clear your calendar. Like, you're gonna have to go patch all your machines.
Yeah. Now we know it's not
that bad.
as egregious as initially thought. But I think Fedora did the right thing
I do too.
in pumping the brakes because it was coming up to a release. Pumping the brakes on that so that the ISO that you get and that gets widely distributed isn't floating around out there with a pretty big bug. So now it's just a big bug, not a pretty big bug. But still, I appreciate that they pumped the brakes on that, even though it likely hurts perception a little bit.
Yeah,
I appreciate that they have that release it when it's ready mentality.
Yeah, I like that too, and Fedora is great about pushing out updates too. But I feel like there's potential for someone just to install this and never update it. So I mean, you really want the fix in there. I feel like so. I mean, there's
always that group of people.
There is. I mean, and it's released every 9 months, so it's out there for long enough for bad things to happen potentially. So I like getting the fix in there before the final release and making sure everybody's safe and no bad stuff's going to happen.
Better safe than sorry.
Absolutely.
Obviously. Speaking of releasing when it's ready, I have been waiting and waiting and waiting, and not in a bad way, in a very I need this in my life kind of way.
Yep.
Elementary OS 7 is getting close. And now it's a bit of a kind of cleanup time.
Yep.
So maybe this month, and this month being November, we're gonna see a release of Elementary OS 7. I'm super excited for it.
I feel like this is pretty close to the normal cadence for them.
It is.
Because the LTS release of Ubuntu came out in April, and it's like, right about now is when the hype starts to build up a little bit, and then they'll have release candidates and stuff soon. So it feels right on target, honestly. But like you said, they don't release it until they feel it's ready to go. So
yeah, whatever release candidate or beta that they put out, I feel very confident. The same as I do with Mint, that when they put something out for the public, even though it's a release candidate or it's beta, I mean, the software, I think, the way that they put that together is so well done in the first place. Yeah, there'll be bugs. Yes, we get that. But that I feel confident throwing on that beta onto a system and just, when the final release comes out, it comes out, I'll update and I'll be on the final release. But I really, I'm really confident in their skills to be able to say that a beta is release worthy or daily driver worthy. So that's why I'm excited about it.
Yeah, they do put a lot of polish on it, and I think that's a good thing too.
Yeah, and I mean, embracing the Flat Hub, making sure you get all your apps. Obviously, the App Center, where folks go to get paid, which is awesome, especially for open source. Speaking of getting paid, like you got the early access if you want to try that right now. $10 a month on GitHub will get you those early ISOs. And what I thought was really cool, and Danielle Ferre mentioned the NixOS Pantheon maintainer helping out with some Pantheon bugs, some regressions that slipped through the cracks, right? Who would have thought? NixOS coming in clutch to make sure Pantheon's the best it can be on release. What a cool little happenstance.
Yeah, that's super nice.
And I just like that Elementary OS is really just a distribution focused on fit and finish.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of time, a lot of words, a lot of time is spent and oxygen is consumed about, well, what's the base of that? And what does that actually mean?
Right.
And, how much time can we spend talking about things that don't even really matter to the particular distribution? I like that Elementary OS is kind of aside from that. And the product is the desktop, the way you get your software, and the look and the feel of how that works. Not a lot of distros, I think, rise to the level of fit and finish that Elementary OS does.
I'll agree with that.
Outside of the waiting with bated breath, this is one of the biggest reasons that I'm waiting for it, because it just feels so nice when you use it.
Yeah, along with that fit and finish, they talk about redesigning the icons, and
it's gonna look good.
They looked good before, and I don't know that this is like a radically different change. I mean, they're still in the same sort of genre, if you will, but they look super nice. At least the ones they've shown on the blog post. So I mean, it just adds to it. It just adds to the finish. So looking forward to both of those. We'll have a couple of links in the show notes. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to send us a buck or two, or over at the patreon.com/LinuxUserspace. We really appreciate our patrons. Well, not just appreciate, we love our patrons. And you get perks if you're a patron. You get invited to the live studio on recording day, so you can listen to it live. You get early access to, the whole thing if you can't quite make it live even.
And by the way, this episode, that was an hour.
We did an hour before we even started the episode. Yeah.
That doesn't really ever see the light of day. It doesn't.
No.
It's for them, for the special folks.
Absolutely. There is so much value in that. I can't, you got to subscribe. I mean, you gotta join to get part of that. So,
and hey, it helps pay for server costs and editing costs and everything else.
Yeah,
so
that feed distribution in the podcast, like that all those things makes it nice and smooth, and we get it delivered right to your user space.
Cannot complain.
Also, if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, go ahead, do that. That's good too. YouTube.com/LinuxUserspace. Ding the bell, get the notifications.
A website named remote-exploit.org was born in September of 2001, backed by Max Moser. He described it as all the security text, tools, links that we collect or will collect in the future will be collected in here if it's possible. The people behind remote-exploit.org are some security-interested individuals that found each other. We try to bring exclusives when possible and try to bring some smiles and light into the dark world of hacking and security. Following that, the next year, mutsonline was started as a forum around 2002 by Matti Aharoni, a.k.a. Muts. It was dedicated to showing folks the offensive and defensive sides of network and application security. Everything from penetration testing to securing and hardening your stuff to rainbow tables and hashing algorithms. It changed names to securit.co.il in mid-2003 and in early 2004, whitehat.co.il. On the site, it says, this site aims to create a repository of tools and information for penetration testers and ethical hackers. In 2004, May 20th, Max Moser releases Auditor Security Collection at his company's website, moser-informatic.ch, as a penetration testing distribution fitted with all the tools an auditor would likely need. In late 2004, whitehat.co.il closed its doors to new registration as the administrative burden was too high. Too many people wanted in, and there weren't enough folks on the back end to deal with it. But around that time, in mid-October, Whoppix 2.4, based on Knoppix 3.6 was released. It stood for whitehat Knoppix and was released as a standalone penetration testing toolkit by none other than Mutz himself, with a long list of companions, including SkyDriver for the original idea, Ill Will for perfecting and pushing it out, and of course his dog, George. In 2005, on July 7th, Mutz announces that Whoppix has evolved into a new project, WHAX, as it hit version 3. And as the name implies, it's based on Slax, a live booting Slackware derivative. It was modular in all the right ways. It allowed more freedom to make easy customization of the Slax environment and almost instantaneous updating of the live boot media. Back over at remoteexploit.org, Max Moser is just as busy since the Auditor Security Collection is issuing release after release. It's a similar project to WHAX that describes itself as the Swiss Army knife for security assessments. Based on Knoppix itself, it avoided the idea of all that modularity and experimentation and didn't quite have the list of applications and features, but what it did have was structure and stability. As 2005 is coming to a close in September, both Moser and Aharoni had made the decision to merge the two projects. But there's one problem. They need a name. Something that, as they put it, didn't sound too hackish. They put it to the community that had been swirling since the early 2000s. After much planning over the next few months, on May 26th, 2006, the two projects finished the merger and became Backtrack. The distro was based on Slax rather than Knoppix to take advantage of the modularity that WHAX was already enjoying. Additionally, a company backing the Backtrack Linux distribution is born. Its name? Offensive Security, and at the time was simply a spin-off of Moser's remoteexploit.org, with the purpose of creating online training sessions that will teach newcomers how things work. Aharoni was the lead instructor, and Moser did instruction and research as he was already well established with his site remoteexploit.org. The training culminated into a standardized test, the OSCP, or the Offensive Security Certified Professional, that you can still take today. March 7th of 2007, Backtrack 2 is released, with a focus on bringing Metasploit versions 2 and 3 and working on the layout of the distribution itself. A beta for Backtrack 3, where lots of kernel testing happened, was issued mid-December, but Backtrack 3 wasn't released until June 19th of 2008. And while work started in Backtrack 1.2, Saint, a vulnerability testing and penetration testing suite, and Maltego, a platform for data discovery and forensics, was officially added, though Saint required a bit of extra work and sign-up to get functional. In 2009, a beta for Backtrack 4 was released in February of 2009, but it wasn't until almost a year later, on January 9th, 2010, that Backtrack 4 was actually released. Its release also brought with it backtracklinux.org, which was a dedicated site for hosting news, information, and downloads for all future versions of Backtrack. And unlike the versions before it, Backtrack 4 had 2 revisions, one in May and another in November. 2011, May 10th, Backtrack 5 dropped the Slax base, and now, based on Ubuntu Lucid Linux. That's 10.04 for those of you that may have missed the Ubuntu history episode. And it was fully GPL compliant with a code name of Revolution, and it's easy to see why. Like Backtrack 4 before it, Release 1 was released in August with new tools and bug fixes. And in 2012, Release 2 dropped in May with a custom-built 3.2.6 kernel with all the wireless injection goodies baked right in. And while Ubuntu-based updates were spotty at best up until this point, some new repositories were added to smooth that out and get updates to users faster. August 13th of 2012 saw Backtrack 5 Release 5 with KDE and GNOME ISOs and a VMware image. This would be the very last release of Backtrack ever. Because on January 22nd of 2013, a post on backtracklinux.org named Kali Linux, a teaser into the future, appeared with the summary. What's happened in the past year? We've been quietly developing the necessary infrastructure and laying the foundation for our newest penetration testing distribution, as well as building over 300 Debian-compliant packages and swearing in 8 different languages. These changes brought with them an incredible amount of work, research, and learning, but are also leading us down the path to creating the best and most flexible penetration testing distribution we have ever built, dubbed Kali. On March 13th, after deciding the things that needed to be done couldn't be done without restructuring everything, they just restructured. And with a shiny new development architecture, why not add a new base too? So the previous base of Ubuntu that Backtrack had used up until this point was shelved in favor of Debian Wheezy and a file system hierarchy standard compliant system. And with all that, Kali 1.0, named Moto, is released. So why Kali as the new name? They say, Hindu goddess of time and change? Philippine martial art? Cool word in Swahili? None of the above. Kali is simply the name we came up with for our new distribution. Why change the name in the first place? With all these significant changes in our distribution, we felt that we needed to convey this in the project name. Backtrack 6 didn't do justice to our efforts in the past year and wouldn't convey our new message to our users. What's the new message? We'll let you find out for yourself. It had 100,000 downloads in the first week. And with so many people jumping on board and over 300 tools to curate, a new branch of Kali, Bleeding Edge Kali, was released less than 2 weeks after Kali 1.0 to satisfy the folks that always needed the most up-to-date versions of all the packages. In September, using the Linux Deploy app in Android, Kali can also be installed on just about any Android device at the time. In January 2014, Kali gets a self-destruct button with version 1.0.6. Imagine this. You have an encrypted hard drive. The bad guy doesn't want to waste his time cracking a password, so he'll just coerce you to type in the password yourself. But instead of typing in the actual decryption password, you type in a nuke password. The encryption keys are destroyed and the data is safe and encrypted. You, on the other hand. And a few days later, Kali soars among the cloud. Amazon's cloud. Anyway, there are AWS images now of Kali. And in the following months, meta packages are introduced to help users install only what they need. That 300 tools is now much, much more. They also introduce virtual machine platform-specific images and EFI boot capabilities. And in September, Kali Net Hunter was released as an open-source Android penetration testing platform for the Nexus line of devices, which in a lot of ways replaces the Linux Deploy app of 2013. In February 2015, and with the release of 1.1.0, the monumental shift from Backtrack to Kali is really showing its benefits from new ARM hardware support, NVIDIA Optimus hardware support, and easy upgrades with a simple apt-get dist upgrade. In May, Kali had even gotten itself containerized. Official Docker images were now available, allowing you to run a containerized Kali and its tools on any platform that could run Docker. It was also around this time that Kali made an appearance multiple times on Mr. Robot, the TV show based around an erratic cybersecurity engineer. Another rebase in August that bumps Kali up to 2.0. This time, the rebase is simply from Debian Wheezy to Jesse, but also takes on the rolling distribution descriptor. From now on, Kali will sit on top of Debian testing, fully take advantage of GNOME 3 by default, XFCE as a light option, and support KDE, Mate, E17, LXDE, and i3WM. NetHunter also gets bumped to 2.0 and comes with support for the OnePlus and Chromebook Flip. By October, Kali 2.0 had seen over 1 million downloads. So, it was time to kill off, once and for all, Kali 1.0. By January 2016, another shift. The rolling stance Kali took in 2.0 proved to work better than expected, prompting the switch to a year.release number version scheme. This was 2016.1. And like 1.0 and 2.0 before it, can simply upgrade to the newest version with a couple of commands. In August, 2016.2 is released along with specific versions of Kali with KDE, Mate, LXDE, E17, and XFCE, each with their own ISO. And to avoid the long update times on a fresh install with old media, the Kali Linux weekly ISOs are available. And they still are. And since the rolling style had still proven a smart choice, the 2.0 repositories are retired. You just don't need them. This is really when Kali hits its developmental stride and settles into a routine. The first release of 2017 was in April 2017.1. It brought with it the AC standard Wi-Fi support and better CUDA support on NVIDIA cards, making GPU cracking of most passwords trivial. In September, the second release, 2017.2, hit the shelves with new tools like apt2 and SSH Audit. And November saw 2017.3 with more tools, more updates, and new features like SMB 3.0 by default. In January of 2018, Kali finds its way into the Windows subsystem for Linux, and just like the Docker versions, allow running Kali and its native tools right from Windows. And the next month, 2018.1 makes its debut with Meltdown and Spectre mitigations. In April, 2018.2. In August, 2018.3. And in September, WireGuard VPN support is official, and so is support for Vagrant, a virtual machine environment management system. And in October, the 2018.4 release with 64-bit Raspberry Pi support in beta. In 2019, Kali saw another 4 releases. 2019.1 in February with Metasploit 5.0, which hadn't seen a major revision since 2011. 2019.2 in May saw mostly fixes, but the NetHunter release reached the 50-device support milestone. In July, Kali was quick to support the new Raspberry Pi 4, and the App Store that the NetHunter editions used was made available to the wider Android community, rooted or not, so that they could sideload common security applications. In September, 2019.3 was released with a revamp of the meta packages, which caused some initial confusion, a Kali status page to show the status of various mirrors and servers, which you can still check out today, and a few helper scripts to get you around the system and get tools prepped faster. The Pinebook also saw support. 2019.4 saw its release in November and brought a cheeky little feature called Kali Undercover. It disguised your Kali installation in Windows 10 clothes. It even changed your terminal prompt to C:. In addition to a pseudo Windows feature, the very real Windows PowerShell now had support as well. Finally, NetHunter got the ability to run as a desktop called Kex. Both Kali and Kali NetHunter Kex will now run on XFCE by default. And a few hours before the year was over, the default root login that was almost a hallmark of these types of distributions was laid to rest in Kali. For the next release, it'll act like any other distro. And a month later, with the release of 2020.1, the deal was sealed. No more root by default. The installation images were also simplified on x86 hardware with only an installer, a live, and a network image, which are the options that we see today. The ARM images were slimmed up, and a request was put out for community support for some of the lesser used ARM-based hardware. NetHunter got the NetHunter, NetHunter Lite, and NetHunter Rootless options to match. In May 2020.2, KDE Plasma saw some love, and PowerShell is almost ready by default. In August 2020.3, Zish, or ZSH, goes into testing. NetHunter gets a ton of Bluetooth hacking tools, and support for high DPI screens is baked in. While other distributions needed instructions and tinkering, Kali's solution was either click a button or type a command, and you're done. In November 2020.4, Zish comes out of its cocoon and shows off a lot of the styling and auto-completion we see today, with tons more tools and information upon opening up a terminal, giving some tips, tricks, and answering some frequently asked questions. In December and throughout its 5-season run, Kali Linux is spotted in the TV show Mr. Robot over and over again, which is a good watch, but read the back of the box first. In February 2021.1, the command not found package is added by default for when a user attempts to launch a tool that isn't already installed. Command not found will direct the user on how to install it. NetHunter also saw some big updates, including a long overdue update of BusyBox. In April, my favorite website, kids.kali.org, was launched. The site said, imagine all of the same powerful tools used to launch complex attack simulations, now in the hands of a preteen. And they ask, can a 7-year-old really crack a password hash or learn to blind SQL injection? Can a 3rd-grade master cryptography and stenography without being able to spell either one? Maybe not, but at least Terminal has fun pictures now. Yes, it was for April Fools, and one of the best.
It was a good one.
In June 2021.2, saw the addition of Kali-Tweaks, a text-based UI to customize what's included in Kali, and the most useful customizations like how Zish works and displays the prompt. Ghidra, a reverse engineering tool developed by the National Security Agency of the USA, was also first included in this release, as well as the open source version of VS Code, Code OSS. In September, 2021.3 was released with updates and new tools, of course, but also a full refresh of the Kali Tools website for digging up tools and finding their purpose. Also a renewed focus on running Kali in a VM using the pre-made appliances. There was also a new watch, a NetHunter smartwatch named Tick Hunter Pro. In December, 2021.4 brought support for Apple Silicon, sort of. The ISOs were meant to run within Parallels or the tech preview of VMware Fusion. And though there have been many theme changes up to now, the theme fixes and updates in this release are what we still see today. In February of 2022, version 2022.1 marks the first release that includes visual refreshes on a predictable cadence. .1 versions will now always have a distinctive visual representation to give users a clue at a glance that things have moved on for the better. This will include wallpapers, login screens, installer themes, and boot menus. And just in case you were tired of installing the Kali-Linux-everything package, there's now an everything ISO, and it's huge. In March, to anyone running on bare metal and paying attention, it would be hard to miss the word unkaputba. The Kali folks slipped in better ButterFS support with snapshots, making Kali unbreakable or indestructible. All the snapshots were listed in the grub menu just in case you needed them, and used the snapper GUI on the desktop. In May, 2020.2 brought Hollywood Activate, a screensaver launched manually or automatically that makes the terminal spit out all kinds of fun made-for-TV hacker stuff. Unkaputba is also made official, and the desktops get major updates. In August 2022.3, focuses on the community with the Kali Linux and Friends Discord channel, where devs will chat with all comers after every release of Kali. There was even a contest to show off how folks customize their Kali desktops during this release. They note that Matrix was an option, but they want to be where their users are. There's also the IRC channel if you're into that. And we're still waiting on 2022.4. It's not out yet. And maybe, with it, a new contest, too.
So you want to read the news that matters as it unfolds? Head on over to our subreddit or our news channel on Discord. linuxuserspace.show/reddit for our subreddit, and linuxuserspace.show/discord for our Discord. And we're also on Telegram, Matrix, and all the other chat platforms, too.
You name it, we got it. Just find us. Just type in Linux user space into the Googles and, you know, maybe...
put a slash after it, and then you'll find something, because I probably got a redirect for that.
Yeah, tilt the search algorithms in our favor. That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, come on over there and have a conversation with us, and, we'll chat about the new things that are happening.
So, Dan, how did it go? How, I know you didn't want to do it.
I did not. Well, I didn't want to. All right. So I didn't want to promote this as a daily driver.
Okay.
Right. I do use this a lot. Oh, and more specifically, I use the tools that are in Kali a lot, because one of the things that, you know, as a system administrator or network administrator, there's a lot of things you want to do to get some visualization into what's going on your network and in your systems. And you want to make sure they're not vulnerable to things that are out there. So a lot of the tools that are included in Kali are, you know, mainstays probably in a lot of, you know, sysadmin's toolbox. I'll say this, like, so some of the tools that are in there are included in some commercial products that, you know, which is cool. And so we use those a lot. But beyond that, if you want to do a one-off test on something, Kali's great, because you can spin that up, do your testing, and then you know where you stand, so that when it comes time for, you know, the automated testing to come through that you paid for, you aren't going to bomb it, or at least you hope you aren't. And
there you go.
It'll catch the new things that come through as they develop. Yeah, a lot of these tools are very, very helpful. We talked about some of this in the pre-show. One of the ones that I'm surprised you hadn't heard of, but you hadn't, was it's kind of a silly little thing. It's not even really a penetration testing thing, but
information gathering.
It's information gathering. And if you want to know what's on the other end of that and how you get there, the tool to use for me is TCP traceroute. Now, you've probably all heard of traceroute and trying to, you know, get the information of the routers that stand between you and the thing that you're looking for. The thing about traceroute, normal traceroute, is it uses ICMP packets or ping the same thing underneath ping. It uses those, and there's, as someone that's security minded, and I know you are, Leo, you probably tend to turn a lot of that sort of thing off so that you can avoid the denial of service type of attack that is potential. And
we were talking about that, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about internet etiquette and the white paper that defined what you're supposed to do as far as ICMP packets
reject
go. And
that, or drop that, or,
the nice thing is you reject it with a message that says, I don't want to hear from you, don't talk to me.
Right.
But I think the security conscious thing is to just drop it and never give it a response, right? Like,
so then you don't know that something's on the other end. So that happens a lot because you don't want to get overwhelmed with those requests. However, if it's something like a web server that is, using a TCP port, you can use TCP traceroute and identify the port that you want to target, and it will use TCP packets to find out the routing path that it takes to get there. And sometimes that could be a little different than just a regular trace route anyway, especially if you got some load balancers in the middle of that and you want to see what you're hitting. I mean, so it's a very useful tool. It's a silly little thing, kind of small, but there it is. It's right there in Kali. That's one of the ones they talk about.
Does that particular tool assume port 443 or
I
port
think it
80?
does 80 by default, but you can identify other TCP ports too. So if you were looking at something that was like on 8443, for example, which is another one that gets very popular because you're trying to secure, but you're not running as a privileged user potentially. Because
you can't use lower than 1,000 without root privileges if you're like spinning up a web server or something like
so
that.
If it's running
you have
as
to go
a user,
above.
Yeah. So you can identify the port that you want to target, which is super helpful, I think. Anyway, that's a silly little thing. Like that one a lot. All right. So here's my segue into the documents. The documents that Kali provides are absolutely excellent because they document all of the tools. And sometimes I use the documentation just to find out more about the tool, even though I'm not running Kali at the time, or I've installed something else, So
it's way deeper than what a man page would give you. Yes, a man page is going to define what each option does and everything else, but I think the real benefit to what Kali and its backing company, Offensive Security, really does is they go deeper than that.
They do.
They Offensive Security is a teaching type institution that puts together amazing educational materials, and if you are even remotely interested in this stuff, that should be a place that you frequent to learn. There are forums that you can log into. There are people that you can talk to that are very open to the noob questions.
They do,
right?
They do. They answer those. They have to. I mean, because it sounds exciting, and so the noobs are attracted to it somewhat, right?
Yeah.
So, which is fine.
There's paid education on top of that as well, right? But there's the I'm just curious about this and have a few questions about it type folks that will swoop in and help you figure out if it's what you need to be doing or if it's something that you really are interested in, instead of the guy on the TV with the hoodie and all the stuff floating on his screen looked really cool. Yeah, this line of work is a lot more boring than that. But it is fun and puzzling at times and frustrating at times, but I guess I'm kind of describing IT as well, right? Like there's a huge overlap in everything that you do as a sysadmin versus everything you do as a security type admin.
Right.
Titles are meaningless, but there's a huge overlap.
Yeah, there is overlap. Well, even if you're a regular sysadmin, you still want to make sure your thing is running to peak performance and not going to get, hacked. So even if you're not the security person per se, you still have to take a security mindset when you're building things. Because
you don't have a choice anymore
can't
in the
avoid
industry.
You can't avoid it.
In software development, in systems administration, in anything that touches those two massive branches of IT, you don't have a choice. You have to take security seriously.
Mm-hmm.
You will very quickly learn why,
Yeah.
as soon as you put something out on the internet that is so important. It's quick now. I mean,
Yeah, you'll get owned
places
pretty fast. Like, yeah.
I mean, websites like Shodan and
Mhm.
other sites like it you'll be on a list so fast.
Very quickly.
I mean, they got printers
Mhm.
and washing machines.
Yep.
On Shodan that you can just break into right now.
Yeah, probably
And-
set to default. Just log in with the default passwords and whatnot. And so
Yes, very bad stuff.
So the password
you
password
have to.
cracking tools that are built in
Oh, I
there.
love these.
Those are the ones that tell you, like, it'll hit all the easy targets first, right? Because it's gonna do the admin, you know, and it's they're in the table. It's gonna hit
Yeah.
those first. And so
Especially if you're using old versions
Mhm.
of whatever operating system you're using. It's old hashing, old encryption,
Yep.
and that stuff will be knocked over. If your password's terrible, that stuff will be knocked over in seconds.
and so you want to
And
know
not
that.
even with a GPU.
Yeah. No, you want to know that. You want to know that before you go releasing that to the wild. So
Right. So yeah, I think what we're getting at is Kali is a very useful distribution
Mhm.
to bolster your defenses because you're using the tools in Kali to be offensive to yourself, right?
Yeah.
To exploit the things that you
that's the intended
own
use.
and
So let's
administer.
hope you're doing that, right? Yeah.
Well, I hope so. I hope that's why you're using Kali. That is the only reason I would ever recommend anybody use Kali is because they're going to use those tools on a very regular basis.
Yep. So I'll equate the documentation on the tools much like the Arch Wiki is for just regular system, Linux system stuff, right?
It
And
is. It's that good.
It's that good, yes. So I use that a lot. I'll tell you the other tool that I've used a ton, which is also in Kali, is Nmap. If you want to know what is on your network, you need to be able to kind of go out there and scan through and do the ping sweep, but also maybe do an ARP sweep too to make sure that things are lining up. You want to know what's on your network. You don't want things that you haven't allowed on there. And so those two things right there, I think together you can paint a pretty nice picture of what you've got, and that's really important if you're in control of something that has any size to it.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason that that I didn't end up stumbling across TCP traceroute is because Nmap can do so much. And while it may not give me the hops in between me and the target, Nmap certainly will, and quietly, tell me whether or not there's something on the other end that is receiving TCP packets on any port.
Yep.
Take it slow. Trying to trigger, any kind of intrusion detection services or whatnot.
Right.
But that's the deal. And as you mentioned, all the way down to ARP sweeps.
Yes.
And in Nmap, it's called a ping sweep, but it actually uses ARP because no device on your network can work without speaking ARP. So the Nmap ping sweep is extremely valuable for those things that are good at blocking
hiding.
ICMP. Right. But this ARP sweep, the ping sweep in Nmap, will pick it up because you can't do networking without ARP. That's just the way that we've built these things. So it is Nmap is my Swiss Army knife, and Kali is the reason that I can use Nmap as well as I can today to figure out what the heck that thing is. What is this IP address on my network? I did an ARP sweep. There's a new one. What is this? I didn't tell anybody my Wi-Fi password. Why is this here?
Right.
And Nmap can give you a lot of that what's your host name, what's your IP address, what ports do you got open, what type of information are you sending out, that kind of thing, and you can get a really good picture of what you're looking at, and you don't even know, is it in your attic? Is it in this room or that room or wherever? If it's on the network, it's likely going to respond to something that Nmap can do. And that was really the catalyst that got me interested. Wait, so there's like data about my computer just being emitted all of the time?
Right.
How did I not know this? And, when you find this out, the next logical question is, well, how much?
Well,
and then the next logical question is, well, how bad is it? And the next logical question is, how do I fix it?
How do I fix it? Yeah. Yeah.
And that takes you, and this is my favorite thing about Kali, and the whole reason that I was pushing to do it is so I could talk about these things. But that progression is what I think a lot of folks that end up in cybersecurity go through, and then you're pants on fire at this point. People think you're crazy. You are absolutely paranoid. So even now, I'm trying to hold it back, but there's so much that I want to tell people. Stop doing that. That so much.
Yeah.
That I've just picked this up little by little and more. And yeah, you do look like the crazy guy in the room. But
eventually you gotta just move past it. But like
you do,
you crack the door open just a little bit there, and then you're into it another layer, and then another layer. Man,
you're staring into the sun at that point.
Yeah,
and it'll hurt you if you stare too long. So you got to take what you can. You got to explain to people that will listen. You got to take those wins when you get them, but you can't go too far. You can't arch by the way it. As far as you can't security by the way, because sometimes people just are not receptive to it.
Right.
And if they're not, let it go.
Right.
You got to let it go, because otherwise you're going to be that guy, and you don't want to be that guy.
You don't want to be that guy. The final tool that I would say that I used a ton probably over the years is Wireshark. And so, because like you said, you want to know what is this stuff that it's emitting, right? Now that I've found it, I've found out where it is or whatever.
That's so true.
Now I want to hear like what is it doing? And so Wireshark is the savior in that. And learning the filters and stuff that are in Wireshark are kind of like the secret sauce, so that you can filter out the traffic to be what you're looking for, and just getting a better sense of what's happening on your network. So, I mean, those tools I've used a ton. You don't need Kali for them, but it is very handy that you can go from one to the next, and then eventually get all of those, get all of that information just by using one distribution. So, and for me, like, I don't need a bare, metal system to do that. Probably a VM is just fine. And you can deploy it somewhere, and then, turn it on, use it when you need it, turn it back off, that sort of thing. And just call it on demand. I find that to be the best way to go about it, personally.
Yeah. Kali as an appliance.
Yep.
Whatever you run that on, in a VM, on a Raspberry Pi,
right,
hidden away,
right,
whatever. That I think that has always been the intention.
It's more than the intention. I think I just find it a better way to use it. Even like, I don't need all that stuff hitting me in the face, all the time. For normal productivity. And
for on that particular point, but because I want to go back to Wireshark for a sec, but on that particular point, that's why you're supposed to use the net install.
Yeah.
And then use the meta packages to pull in only the tools that you need, so you don't end up with this massively bloated system with 100,000 tools that you'll never, ever click on.
Yeah.
And, by the way, when you click on them, it just opens a terminal and runs it in the terminal for most of them anyway. Yeah. But on the Wireshark thing, I wanted to talk about that for just a minute and put your tinfoil hat on for a sec, because this is another one of those things that you do to people that are, just slightly interested in security and maybe slightly interested in bolstering, their day-to-day security on their devices and everything else. just have them install Wireshark. Or you, if you're interested in that, install Wireshark on your machine. And then just run it. Don't even do anything. Don't go anywhere. Don't even have any applications open. Just run it.
Yeah.
For a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It is mind-boggling, the amount of network traffic that your laptop or desktop spews out every second.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it you can explain away. Makes sense. But there's some of it that it just makes you go, why is it doing that?
Yeah, and then you run, like a Windows box. I think Windows is particularly egregious about it. It's worse.
Especially
if way worse.
You're joined to a domain or something like that, because those things are chatty. They want to talk to each other, and they want to share information. They're made to do that. They're that's what they are supposed to do. So
and when you're just looking at the screen, it's all quiet.
Yeah, there's nothing
happening.
It's all in the background.
But the entire time, just traffic spewing all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get better at reading what this stuff is, you can kind of, okay, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. But yeah, as Dan's saying, I mean, some of that stuff, I don't know what that is, and you can't really tell what that is without going in deeper with EtherCap or something like that, and like stripping off the HTTPS certificate and doing all kinds of crazy stuff because it's all encrypted. You got to do some real work to figure out what that is, and again, when you find out what that is, it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't that big a deal either, but. Still, it's eye-opening, I think.
No, it definitely is.
Just exactly what happens, and especially when you open up a browser. How many? That's my favorite thing about Wireshark. I love showing people this. When you go to a website, you don't resolve a domain.
Oh, goodness,
you resolve 30 or 40 or 50. And 49 of those domains are advertisers.
Yeah, it's pulling in assets from all over the place. Yeah, no, it's.
And that's the entire premise of ad blockers like Pi-hole. They act on those 49 and let the one through.
Hopefully.
So, man. But I'll stop and talk specifically about Kali for a minute.
Sure.
Because, my God, I could just tinfoil hat all day. I promise. Get me in a Discord chat. I promise we'll do it. Okay, so I will say, though, I wanted to look at Kali as a daily driver. I know that you shouldn't. I know that Kali recommends that you shouldn't. Multiple times, they discourage using Kali as a daily driver, and they but you select few that want to do it. We're not going to tell you not to, but, for people that don't know what they're doing, don't do that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to look at it from that perspective. And so diving into it as a regular old distro, it installed like any old Debian distro does. It is Debian underneath with, tweaks here and there to the kernel and other bits. I did an apt full upgrade as they recommend to get everything updated. It got to 87% on the download and just stalled. I don't know what happened there, but Control-C and then running it again, it picked back up, unpacked, installed everything. So just a weird little apt fumble. I don't know what happened there. And then, but I guess the most important thing is that like Kali uses only Kali repositories by default.
Yes.
But in the Kali repositories, you will find two things that was the reason that I questioned whether or not Kali should, would, could, might be a daily driver. And those two packages are Flatpak and Snap. Both are available and very current, might I add, in the Kali repository. So installing those enables you to install everything.
Yeah, pretty much. It's game over then,
whatever
right?
you want.
Yeah.
You want to run your Apple Music, you could do that. You want to run the bleeding edge Firefox, you can do that. You want to run the regular Firefox, you can do that because Kali comes with ESR, be aware. But the current ESR, it's not behind or anything.
No, it's fairly recent.
But you want to record your desktop with OBS, you can do that too. You want to use Peak, you can do that. You want whatever you want. Between Flatpak and Snap, you got it, man.
Yeah, that really does cover everything. And then the repositories on top of that. So, I mean...
Right. Yeah, speaking of the repositories on top of that, normally I install Snap so that I can get an easy installation of btop, formerly BPyTop, formerly BashTop. But btop, but Kali packages it. So I didn't need to
Didn't even
actually
need that.
install Snap. And so I didn't go down that rabbit hole, but I did go down the Flatpak rabbit hole, and everything works. It's just Debian testing.
Yeah.
So if you were running Debian testing, quite likely going to be the exact same experience that I had.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I didn't. It's running on XFCE. I was running on XFCE. Dan, I suppose.
Yeah,
you
I did
the same?
too. Yeah, I mean that's what it comes with by default, and
Yeah.
and so that's fine. Although all they give you instructions on how to install all of the other desktop environments.
It's even an option in the installer
You
if you
could do
just
it in
want to
the
install
installer.
those other
Yeah,
desktops
no.
instead. But of course, there's a meta package for it if you want that. But it far exceeded my expectation as a daily driver desktop.
I think some of the recent changes, right? So they're rootless.
Yes, that was a big one.
That's a big deal. It's the one that holds everybody back, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
so
you can always make a user and grant it the correct privileges and things like
Yeah,
that.
you have to do
But
it yourself,
no,
right?
No one's trying to do that.
yeah,
Nobody's trying to
nobody's
do
got
that.
time for that. And so I think that's a big change that sort of allowed this. I guess there's some things that, maybe you don't want there. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, I think the fact that you can use Flatpak and Snap and get all the regular applications on top of the penetration testing applications, I guess you got me there. You could use it as a daily driver, but I'm not going to recommend it. I'm just not. You're not happening.
So that brings me to my final word on this, which is final words. Yeah. So can Kali be used as a daily driver? Yeah. If you're crazy enough to do it, and I need to stress the crazy modifier.
Yeah.
As a daily driver, using it in a professional capacity, I get that. But as a daily driver, crazy is the word I would use. If you're crazy enough to do it, start with the net installer.
Right.
And add what you need.
Not everything.
As you need it.
Right.
Don't go for the everything package. Don't just whack 10 gigs onto your install because, ooh, these tools look cool. Use kalitools.org, find the cool tools that you want, and bring them in. But even then, I would still recommend using it on a secondary device and not your primary device. So, should Kali be used as a daily driver?
I'm going to say no.
No, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm
I agree with you there.
not going to recommend. Yeah.
I don't think so. Not on your laptop that you're taking out to McDonald's. No. Not that machine. Will I keep using Kali as a daily driver? Sort of. I have a spare Raspberry Pi, and I do like network security. Oh, so much.
Mm-hmm.
And Kali has specific installers for the Pi.
They do.
So, yes, in this capacity, in a secondary machine, something that is automated every now and then and emails me a report, yeah, because that is what Kali was always meant to be. It was always meant to be a platform that you use to launch investigations and attacks and penetration tests so that you can use that information that you glean from it to make your network and network security better. That is, I think, what Kali is for, and I think the Kali folks agree. So use it like that.
And you've got me in agreement there as well, Leo. I think, like you said, great appliance. It's something if you're, into this in a professional sort of sense, or you're just goofing around on your own home network, your network.
Learn subnetting first.
Yep. VLANs are nice too, so that you can.
When you realize you accidentally scanned the internet.
Yeah, don't do that.
It gets real. So
yeah.
Don't do that.
When the guys in the dark, SUV with the black suits show up, you might have went too far.
Yeah.
But if you want to learn more about your own network, or you're working in a professional environment, have an appliance where you can use this, I think like even for me, like a LexD container is kind of handy.
Yes. Docker WSL.
container, WSL, all of those tick the box for me, and I feel like those are kind of handy to have around if you were doing this on a daily. So maybe you don't use it as your daily driver, but you may use it on a daily. So I mean, I'm okay with that.
Listen, I know about half of you listening have a Raspberry Pi in a drawer somewhere not getting used.
And so when you're done with it, like put it back in the drawer.
Yeah, unplug it. Be like look around, decide if you like this cybersecurity thing, and if you don't, throw it in the drawer. If you do, learn first.
Right.
Act second.
Right. And here's the thing: if you've got like 2 Raspberry Pis, you could set up some services on one of them. And then do some learning.
Now you're getting fun.
Yeah, so like you build a little small network, and then you can do some things in your mock network and learn all sorts of stuff that way.
There are also exploitable Linux and Windows versions out there. Metasploitable was one. I don't know if they still actively develop, but it's still a really cool learning tool to like pretty much anything that you choose in Metasploit will work.
Right.
So it's really cool to see like, I actually popped a shell on that box. Right. That's cool.
Again, don't put that on the internet either. So
good God, don't do that.
It won't take
local network only. And if you don't know what the difference is, you got to learn that first.
Just get a crossover cable. You can't get any more local
great way to isolate.
Right there.
You can't, actually. Yeah. A switch not connected to the internet. Perfect.
Right. So, I mean, but yeah, like these are great ways to learn, and just, keep yourself safe. Hey, and if you want to know more about us and our show, you can get all the links over at linuxuserspace.show. And, you want to get your email in on a feedback episode, which, it's coming up soon. Gonna want, you can email us, contact@linuxuserspace.show. Speaking of next time, we're all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah, we're not done. We got 10 more episodes to go, so there's definitely a next time.
There is a next time. And so next show is a topic and feedback show. We do plan to put a pause on like our app history. We covered text editors and the CLI and all sorts of history on them. So we're going to put a little pause on that so we can focus a little more on awesome topics and feedback things and catch a little breath. Yeah.
Well, I won't say no to it, a little breath, but and it'll give me more time to figure out what kind of app history you want to hear about.
Yeah, where do we want to go next?
So, specifically, if you've made it this far into the show that you're actually listening to the housekeeping and didn't actually like 30 seconds till they start talking about something cool again, you are who I'm talking about. Because you, I think, are the linchpin to this show. Without you, the show kind of doesn't really make sense. So, you that are listening right now, what kind of apps do you want to hear about? Is it a year old? Is it 10 years old? Is it 100 years old? Was it created in the primordial ooze of Unix?
Mm-hmm.
And if it was, do you want to hear about what color the primordial ooze was? Because if you do, I need a list. Tell me what you want to hear about, and I'll spend 30 days, okay, maybe 30 days,
a couple
digging
of weeks
it
anyway.
up and figuring it out. At least a couple of weeks. Okay, so 14 days. 14 days figuring it out. And then when the procrastination kicks in, I'm like, oh God, but whatever. We'll get the history done, just like we've done every episode up to this point. But I do want to hear from you. I really do. It is extremely important that I know what you want to hear about. So tell me in the Reddit, in the Matrix, in the Telegram, in the Discord, in the Mastodon, the Twitter, the
all the places,
Instagram,
yeah,
the wherever,
yeah,
right?
on the YouTube comments even. It doesn't. Yeah, that works too.
How did I forget we had a YouTube? The YouTube, yes. Anywhere, drop me a comment, drop Dan a comment, tell Dan, what do you want to hear about next? And then that's what we'll dive into.
Yeah, we will.
So we got to talk about actual next time.
Yes. Oh, how did I?
Well, the actual next distro. Sorry,
I almost
we
forgot
did talk about
that
next time
entirely, Leo. We spent an hour before the show started trying to figure that out, and here I am at the end of the show, and I forgot what we did for the first hour.
Yeah, that was an hour. So enjoy that. So, what are we doing? What have we gotten ourselves into this time?
So, I know you're into the spooky season, and on Spooky Day, there was a distro that was released. It was a little quiet, I guess, but in honor of that, I think we should do Linux Lite.
Wait a minute. Linux Lite is the spookiest Linux distro.
Guess so.
Of all time? Question mark?
They didn't spin it that way, but sure.
I feel like of all the distros that we have done, I would have noticed a release on Halloween Day or All Hallows Eve. Wait, is All Hallows Eve the 30th? I don't know. Whatever. Listen, I like spook. I like spooky.
Mm-hmm.
The whole entire month is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But the 31st, I don't know of any other distro that has released a release on the 31st. Prove me wrong, Internet. Prove me wrong.
I guess that's another research topic for a later date.
Has there.
We're not going there now. Anyway, so they released their latest one, 6.2, I think, on Halloween, which is really only a few days ago. So it can't get any fresher than that, right? I mean, that's hot off the press.
That pumpkin is not even wilted and decomposing yet.
It's not ready for pie. It's still fresh.
I'm ready for it. Linux Lite, let's go.
Let's do it. And so that's what we're going to do for the month. Should be good. Leo, where can we find you on the internet?
Oh, the old @LeoChavez on the Twitter and the @LeoChavez @Mastodon.social because people are flocking that direction right now.
Yeah, they are.
For some reason. I don't know why.
And so I'm @Casey2BEasy on Twitter as well. And also @Casey2BEasy @Mastodon.social. Recent change. Listen to the last episode. You'll catch up on that.
Don't forget about the recent change. You gotta get on the new one. I mean, if you're already following him, you don't have to, but otherwise.
So on the Mastodon.social as well. And I had a lot of fun. So I've been getting requests for followers a lot lately.
Oh, you do have it set that way to approve the followers.
I don't know. I've thought about that both ways, but I do.
Listen, close the DMs, open the follows.
Okay.
I think if you're really adventurous, just open the DMs too, and then enjoy the toxicity.
I wasn't really trying to encourage that, so
Okay, yeah, tamp down on that. I got you.
I do like all my followers, so that's pretty great stuff.
See, you got approved though, so Dan likes you at that point.
Absolutely. Been through the approval process. Anyway, join us in 2 weeks when we return to the Linux user space.